So let's talk about one of the most important virtues of all, courage. It's something we all look up to, right? But what is it really? And maybe more importantly, how do we get more of it in our own lives? Well, let's dive in.
To really get a handle on what courage is, the best place to start is actually with its opposite. So let's ask a simple question. What's the real source, the root cause of cowardice?
It all boils down to just one thing. One word: fear. The ancient Greeks even had a god for it, Phobos. It really is the main villain in almost every story, especially our own.
And that simple idea is a huge shift in perspective, isn't it? The biggest thing standing between you and the person you could be, it's not your boss, it's not your circumstances, it's fear.
So what does fear actually do to us? Well, it keeps us from our own destiny by just freezing us in our tracks. It whispers a million little excuses into our ear. I mean, think about any classic story, that call to adventure. What's the first thing the hero usually does? They refuse the call. Why? Because fear tells them it's too risky, that they're not good enough, that they're going to fail.
Okay, so if fear is the enemy, what's our weapon against it? Let's get really clear on what courage is, because honestly, most people get this totally wrong.
This right here, this is the biggest misconception out there. Courage is not about being fearless. I mean, come on, nobody is fearless. Courage is making the choice to act even when you're scared. It's about moving forward when every part of you wants to run away.
This quote from William Faulkner just nails it. Be scared. You can't help that, but don't be afraid. See the difference? Being scared, that's a physical reaction. It's adrenaline. You can't just turn it off. But being afraid, that's a choice. That's when you let the fear take over and dictate your actions. Courage is choosing not to give in.
And this is where it gets really deep. For the ancient Greeks, the true opposite of courage, what they called Andrea, it wasn't just being a coward, it was melancholia, that feeling of apathy, of just giving up completely, that total surrender to despair. That is the real enemy of courage.
And history is just filled with amazing examples. I mean, think of Charles de Gaulle. He was the symbol of a France that refused to despair, even when his entire country had fallen. Or John Lewis. You look at his mugshot and he's almost smiling because he took actual pleasure in causing good trouble for what he knew was right. They were all scared, for sure, but they acted anyway.
Okay, so we get it. We know what courage is now. But how do we actually build it? Because it's not something you're just born with. It's a skill. It's something you can forge, like a muscle. So let's get into the how-to.
And what's great is that it boils down to a pretty practical two-step method. First, you have to look your fear in the eye, really foresee the worst-case scenario. And second, you start to systematically replace that fear with actual, tangible competence.
So let's break down that first step with a quick story about Ulysses S. Grant. When he was young, he was absolutely terrified by the sound of wolves in the woods. His imagination just ran wild. He pictured this massive pack. But when he finally worked up the nerve to look, you know what he saw? Just two of them. And that's the lesson, right? Our minds will always make the enemy seem bigger and scarier than it actually is.
And that's the key takeaway. You have to drag that fear out of the shadows and into the light. The second you define it, the second you count the wolves, it shrinks. It becomes manageable. Because once a fear is truly defined, it can be defeated.
All right, now for step 2. The big problem with fear is that it creates this thing called aversion. It's that feeling of, I really don't want to do that. It makes us avoid the very thing we need to face, whether it's a tough conversation or giving a big presentation.
So what's the antidote to that feeling? It's simple. Repetition. It's practice. It's training. The more you do something, the more familiar it becomes. And when something is familiar, it's not nearly as scary. That repetition, that's what builds real, earned confidence.
And that's how it all comes together. That aversion, that desire to run away, it gets beaten by confidence. And that confidence, which you built through practice and hard work, becomes the solid foundation, the bedrock, for true courage. You're not just hoping you can do it anymore. You know you can, because you've put in the reps.
So we've defined the enemy, which is fear, and we've laid out the training plan to defeat it. But now this is where it all turns to you. This isn't just about historical figures or abstract ideas. It's about what you're going to do next.
You have to remember this and never underestimate it. One person, just one person, with real courage can be a majority. It doesn't take a whole army to start a revolution or to make a change.
It just takes one person who's willing to stand up first.
And here's why that one person is so incredibly powerful. Courage is contagious. It spreads. You know how fear can ripple through a crowd? Well, so can bravery. When you decide to act, when you stand up, you give other people permission to be brave too. Your courage makes them courageous.
As we get to the end here, I want to leave you with this incredible thought from the philosopher Seneca. He said that he actually felt sorry for people who never had to face any hardship. And you think, why? Because those challenges, those tough times, they aren't a curse. They're an opportunity. They're the only way you'll ever find out what you're really made of.
Which brings us to the last and maybe the most important question of all. The next time something needs to be done, the next time a stand needs to be taken, you have to ask yourself this: if not me, then who?